And welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 560, and today's date is January 7th, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government Central Bankers Using False Flags to Keep Coalition Countries in Line. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, out in Europe, we understand there's a major problem with the snap elections coming up on January 25th with Greece. It looks like Germany is preparing for maybe a Greece exit at this point. We also see that Germany, their jobless rate has increased to 6.4%. Germany's unemployment rose slightly in December to 6.4%. Germans were registered as unemployed in December, up by about 47,000 over the previous month, pushing the unadjusted jobless rate up from 6.3%. And we understand that Germany is nervous. A lot of the Eurozone countries are very nervous about what is taking place in Greece. And of course, as we know, the central bankers have been giving many warnings saying, listen, don't leave the euro. If you decide to do so and you elect the wrong president, guess what? We will lock you down. We will take over the banking system. There will be banking holidays. Basically, you will be Cyprus. And we can see this is what the bankers are planning for. I mean, we're showing the elections, the opinion polls that the Syriza group looks like they could be the new elected government. And if they are elected, then it looks like they might leave the Eurozone, or at least try to, and write off a lot of this debt. Germany is reportedly making plans for Greece to quit the Eurozone, according to government sources. Berlin is allegedly preparing for the outcome of the Greek parliamentary vote on January 25th. There is a possibility that the left-wing Syriza party, which wants to abandon the policy of austerity and cancel part of Greece's debt, might just win. But again, we have to see if those central bankers step in and kind of manipulate the elections so they don't go that way. German government experts expect a major bank run should the Greek exit from the Eurozone happen, as the country's citizens would storm banks to withdraw euro deposits. And again, this is what we've been talking about for a very long time. Think about it. When things start to fall apart, you don't want to be saying, you know something, maybe I should get my money out. Maybe this is the time to prepare. Maybe this is the time to get food, water, weapons, medical supplies. You don't want to be thinking about that when this time comes. And we see this happen in Cyprus. It's happening in Greece. And this will spread across the Eurozone, eventually hit here in the United States, and everything will just come tumbling down. And you don't want to be left at that point where you become desperate, because there's going to be many people out there that are going to be very desperate when this collapse comes. And we can see that these people will storm the banks. They will want their money. They want to get it out of there. The EU would be forced to secure the banking system with a bailout of billions. And of course, as we know, the bail-in documents, they're basically in place. They're going to go after everyone's money. They're going to shut everything down. They're going to lock it up. People will not be able to access it. Whoever got it out already. You'll see tons of people in line at the bank trying to get their money. There might even be riots at this point, because the Greek people have been through quite a bit. They have been feeling austerity for a long time. A lot of these people have been unemployed for a very long time, and it's getting worse and worse as time goes on. And of course, we have to think back when they first bailed out Greece, when the Eurozone, the IMF told us that, hey, everything is fine. We bailed them out. They're on their way to a recovery. And guess what? Here we are today. They completely lied. After three tranches of loans, look where they are today. I mean, again, Chancellor Angela Merkel is out there, allegedly called the possible Greek exit manageable. So they're already spinning this right now, using propaganda that everything is just going to be fine. And if they leave, so be it. Nobody else is going to leave. Nobody else wants to leave. And as we know, Iceland already said, you know what? We're not applying for to be part of the Eurozone. We see what's going on there. We see all these countries in debt. We see the massive unemployment. Why would we want to join? So our country can experience that? No, they don't want to do this. But the thing of this whole thing, who is going to be hurt most if this happens? Well, private owners now hold about 17% of the debt, the remaining 83% of the outstanding loans and bonds. These include Euro area governments, 62%, the International Monetary Fund, 10%, through its participation in the two bailouts, and the European Central Bank, 8%, which purchased bonds in 2010 through its securities market program. The remaining 3% are repurchase agreements and assets held by the Central Bank of Greece. Germany falls to number 9 with an exposure amounting to about 2.2% of its economy size. France falls to number 8 to a 2.2%, and Italy to number 7 to 2.5%. Portugal is at 3.2%, Cyprus at 2.8%, and Slovenia 2.6% top the rankings, meaning these countries have the most to lose if Greece decides to write down its public debt. And nobody stands to lose more than Europe's biggest bank by a mile, and that's Deutsche Bank. So these are going to the countries, the banks, the people that are going to be hit the hardest, and this will have a domino effect that will run across Europe. Now, again, will the central bankers let this happen? Are they going to step in? Are they going to rig the elections? Are they going to be there to pretty much manipulate everything in their favor? We've seen it happen many, many times, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do step in. Now, if the Syriza party does win, we're going to have to watch this very closely and see what occurs. Now, as we've been talking, the Baltic Dry Index has been continually dropping. It is down now to 744 points, and this is as of January 7th, which is today. And we can see that we are getting very close to that 2008 recession point in time, where I think it was in 2012, where we finally hit bottom of about 647 points of the Baltic Dry Index. And the Baltic Dry Index is a good indicator because this is raw material that is shipped for factory production, and it cannot be manipulated by speculators and things like that. And this gives us a really good indication of how the economies are doing, who's producing what, and we've been seeing in the past couple of days that factory orders are down, factory production is down, everything is down. The stock market crashing continuously. They're trying to pump it up, and they are going to continually do that. They have the high-frequency traders back in, the plunge protection team. They're off of vacation, and they're going to pump this market as best they possibly can right back up. And they're going to continually do this to convince everyone we're in a recovery, to make everyone believe that everything is fine. Everyone all in into the stock market. Everyone all in into treasuries. This is what they've been doing all of this time. Now, as we know, the oil prices have been suppressed. They're trying to use this for many, many different agendas, and we see they've been trying to spur retail sales throughout the holiday season, and of course, this did not work whatsoever, and we're starting to see some retail stores really starting to take the hit from what has happened during this holiday season. I've already reported on many store closing, but we have another. Wet Seal, they're going to be closing about 66% of its stores. They're going to be laying off 3,700 workers. Wet Seal Inc. said Wednesday that it would close about 66% of the stores, and this is about 338 stores. And again, all these people who are working part-time, who didn't meet the qualifications of working a certain number of hours, getting paid a certain number of dollars, will not be able to apply for unemployment insurance. And a lot of these people will not apply because they're under that mark, and each state has their own different regulations on how they handle this. But in general, it's pretty much the same. And what we're seeing here is that there's more and more people getting laid off in retail and in big business. It is not stopping whatsoever. Now, as we know, the real economic indicators that we've been looking at show that the American people are tapped out. They don't have the money to purchase anything. And a lot of people think, well, hey, this person went in and they purchased a car. No, they really didn't. they actually rented a car. When you purchase a car, you pay in cash. When you rent it, you make payments, and you're only able to keep it for a certain period of time. And this is what a lot of people are doing today. They're leasing their cars. Basically, it's renting. And you can put no money down. Basically, a lot of the car dealerships right now, you can go in with absolutely no money, with no credit, and get a vehicle. And of course, as we know, the delinquency rates has been skyrocketing. A lot of the people are getting their cars repoed because they can't make the payments. And we're seeing that 3 in 5 Americans don't even have enough savings to cover unexpected bills. According to the latest bank rate survey released today, more than 3 in 5 Americans don't have money in their savings to cover any unexpected bills, such as a $500 car repair or a $1,000 emergency room visit. In fact, only 38% of the respondents said they have enough funds in their bank accounts to cover even the most mundane of spending emergencies. Most others would need to take out debt or cut back elsewhere. And this is not a sign of the economy growing, that everyone is doing well. And you have to remember back when President Obama says, listen, we're in a recovery, you just can't feel it, so you're going to have to believe me. Well, a recovery is when you do feel it. It's when you feel secure in your job, when you can get a high-paying job, where you say, you know what, we're saving money now, let's go out and actually purchase a car. Let's go out and purchase a home. Let's get that big TV that we always wanted. But we are not seeing this whatsoever. We're seeing a lot more people being laid off, becoming unemployed. They can't find the same full-time work at the same salary level, so they have to take something a lot lower. And you have to remember, they've purchased their homes, their cars, and everything. Their whole lifestyle revolved around their salary before. And if they bring in a lower salary, guess what? They can't make payments to their house. They can't make payments to their cars. And eventually what happens? There's a foreclosure. The cars get repossessed. People are living out on the streets, and this is what we've been seeing for quite a while. Now, as we know, the debt here in the United States continually grows. It's nonstop growing. And what we're seeing right now is that the debt is growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, when Obama first took office back in January of 2009, America's tab, the debt tab, was $10.6 trillion. Now, the Treasury says in 2014 that the tab of the U.S. debt is about $18.1 trillion. Of course, this is the number they're giving us, but the real debt is somewhere around like $200 trillion or so, because there's a lot of things they don't count in this. I don't know how they get around this. They just do whatever they want, basically. More than $7.5 trillion has been added to the national debt under Obama, with 2 years to go. And he'll probably hit about $20 trillion by the time he's done, which is somehow even worse than the $4.9 trillion added under both George W. Bush terms combined. So we can see we are definitely at the end game. Everything is increasing. The debt's increasing. And we've seen this, and this is a really good indicator, we've seen this in Europe, where the debt continually grows, and it grows exponentially. We see it in Greece. We see it in France. We see it in Spain. We see it in Italy. And all of this cannot be sustained. And they had to implement austerity on the people. Here in the United States, we have a different situation. They can just continually create money. But eventually what happens, and we all know what happens, that time does come to an end. It's almost like a family who's making $50,000 a year. That's the revenue they're bringing in. And they continually take another credit card of $10,000, another card of $10,000, and eventually there will be a time that comes that you just can't bring in enough revenue to support the interest payments on all that credit card. And this is what we're seeing here today, and this is why the United States government, the central bankers, have been enacting more taxes, pushing in bills that will create more taxes, and going after people overseas with FATCA to find more revenue to bring in the government to support this debt. Other countries weren't so lucky. They couldn't create money like the United States can, and they had to impose austerity. And guess what? They still can't make it. France, like I said yesterday, they're looking to sell their paintings to bring in revenue to the government. So we can see right now, this will not help. And out of the Economic Collapse blog, we see that there are definitely key events that are preceding the last financial crisis that are happening right now. Number one, a really bad start to the year for the stock market. During the first 3 trading days of 2015, the S&P 500 was down a total of 2.73%. There were only 2 times in history when it has declined by more than 3% during the first 3 trading days of a year. Those years were 2000 and 2008, and we know what happened in those years. Those years, we witnessed enormous stock market declines. A substantial decline for 10-year bond yields. When investors get scared, there tends to be a flight to safety as investors move their money to safer investments. We saw this happen in 2008, and that is happening right now. The price of oil crashes. There is only one other time in history when the price of oil has declined by more than $50 in less than 1 year. The only other time there has been an oil price collapse of this magnitude, we experienced the greatest financial crisis since the Great Depression, and that was in 2008. And guess what happened right afterwards? The price of oil went right back up. Global inflation slows down significantly. When economic activity slows down, so does inflation. This is something that we witnessed in 2008. This is also something that is happening once again. In fact, it is being projected that the global inflation is about to fall to the lowest level that we've seen since World War II. And I think what's happening here, and I mentioned this probably 9 months ago in one of my reports, what I'm seeing here is we're going to see deflation first. And then, like a tidal wave, we're going to see inflation hit. And it's going to hit really hard because this is when the countries, especially the central banks, are going to have to ramp up the creation of money. A lot of the countries out in the Middle East will be run over by the people. The United States will lose control. Other countries will no longer keep the U.S. dollar in reserve. We see the BRICS coming live in January. The IMF is looking at the yuan renminbi to become a reserve currency. So a lot of things are happening, and I believe we're going to see this deflationary period, and eventually, just like a tidal wave, it will build, and we will see inflation because they will not be able to stop what is happening. And what we're seeing now with the debt going up, we're going to see the creation of money skyrocket, and it will just completely be out of control. A crisis in investor confidence. Just prior to the last financial crisis, the confidence that investors had that we would be able to avoid a stock market collapse in the next 6 months began to decline significantly. And guess what? This is something else that is happening once again. Investor confidence that the U.S. will avoid a stock market crash in the next 6 months is happening according to the Yale School of Management. This is part of their monthly crash confidence index. The index shows the proportion of investors who believe we will avoid a stock market crash in the next 6 months. And we see that, yes, we are headed towards a major collapse here. And this is going to be a lot worse than 2008. Actually, it's not even going to be anywhere near 2008. It's going to be so bad that people will not know what happened here. And I know all those people out there saying, no, look, the economy's doing better. The corporate media said everything's fine, that gas prices will not hurt anything, and everything is perfect. Real estate is booming. Well, you're being lied to once again. Let's go back to 2008 for all those people who believed in that time period that everything was just fine, that real estate would continually rise, the economy would continually grow. We had Ben Bernanke from the Federal Reserve in 2008 saying, we do not forecast any type of recession in the near future. And in that same year, what happened? The stock market crashed. Everything came tumbling down. And they went to Congress and they blackmailed them into giving them money. So once again, those people, and I see them all over the place, who are trying to convince everyone that everything's going to be fine, guess what? You're going to be lied to once again, because guess what? It is coming. We've been looking at real economic indicators. We have been looking at real estate. We've been looking at the real numbers of unemployment, GDP, inflation, not the manipulated ones the government wants us to believe, but the real information. Look at Europe. It is crumbling to pieces. It is falling apart. We saw this. This is a repeat of 1929. Europe was falling apart. Everyone here in America was saying, everything's fine here. Look. The stock market's hitting 400 points, all-time new highs. And guess what? It all started crumbling down. It crashed, and we went to war. The same thing is happening right now. They're planning the same thing. This is all they know. They get all of this. They make you think that it's caused by another group or country, and they are not to blame. And when this is all over and done, they'll come out of their bunkers and they believe they can start the system all over again, just like they did after World War II, after World War I. The same thing's going to happen. 2008, they had to blackmail the government into giving them money. This time, it's going to be very, very different. And we can see from the suppression of the oil prices that the main countries they're going after, like Russia, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, Brazil, they're all hurting right now. I mean, they're in major recessions. Their currency, the value of the currencies are dropping, and they are definitely hurting. This is being done on purpose. They want one of these countries to blink. They want one of these countries to say enough is enough. They want them to do something. It's called provoking them to do something. And they'll let this go on for quite a while to see if they can get this done. And eventually what will happen, most likely they will not blink, so they'll have to use a false flag event to make it seem like they actually did something. And this is how we will get into war. Now, as everyone understands, Obamacare, it's not a benefit to the people. The Congress, they couldn't even read the legislation. They didn't want them to read it because if they did, they'd say, well, how is this benefiting anyone? We also see that the government officials exempted themselves as soon as they found out what this was. Even Harvard, the professors there who help the government, they're out there saying, wait a minute, we don't want this either. So all these people who gave advice, who designed it, who created it, they realize this is no good. We don't want it. And we can see right now, this is why they're trying to get out of it. They were designing it to be a tax for the people, to bring in revenue to the government, to bring in revenue to the insurance companies. And we see this happen quite a bit, where a lot of corporations create legislation, submit it, and it's not to benefit anyone here in the United States. It's to benefit themselves. It's to benefit the central bankers. And we can see right now, Congress, like I said yesterday, they need to stop and say, hey, wait a minute. Anything that comes across our desk, we need to rip this thing apart. And if there's no benefit to the people whatsoever, we can't use it. Throw it in the trash. And again, we see Obamacare. We see a federal judge out there looking into the exchanges with the subsidies and saying, hey, this might not be constitutional. And already we see Obama out there saying that he's going to veto any increase of hours in Obamacare. Now, what happened was when Obamacare came out, a lot of companies said, okay, full-time is 40 hours. We will give everyone 39 hours and we will not have to pay for Obamacare. Obama said, well, wait, but whoa. That's not going to work. I'm going to lower it to 30. And this way you'll have to give them Obamacare under the business mandate. And the employer said, well, no, we'll just lower them to 29. Now everyone's part-time work. That's what we're going to do. Everyone's 29 hours. And what happened was everyone's hours got decreased. So it did hurt the employment of people, even though Obama told us it wasn't going to hurt. Now they're trying to push, it looks like the Republicans are trying to push legislation through that will reset the amount of hours that are considered full-time back to 40 hours per week. And of course, Obama's out saying, no, this is going to hurt the economy. It's going to hurt everything. You cannot do this. Basically, what's going to happen here is that people will get more hours and the businesses will have the employees working 39 hours and not have to give them Obamacare. And again, this is not going to really help except for those people giving them more hours and more money coming in. But what they really need to do is get rid of Obamacare at this point. It's a complete disaster. Everyone realizes it's not a health benefit. Everyone realizes that this is a tax. It is time to remove it from the entire system. All we do is see premiums go up. less benefits, higher premiums. It is not for the people. Now, we understand the government continually spies on us. And what's very interesting is that how many spy programs there are that the United States is running. In 2011, the U.S. intelligence agencies successfully finished the development of geolocation tracking software that allows the NSA to collect and save more than 5 billion location records of mobile users around the world on a daily basis, and then through a special program labeled Co-Traveler, analyze and monitor the movement of certain individuals that could be of interest for Washington. I wonder who those people are. Since 2010, information on social contacts of U.S. citizens, their personal data, including telephone calls, internet logs, bank codes, insurance data is being processed by intelligence agencies on a regular basis. And you have to remember, with CISA and CISPA, whatever law they're going to pass here, they will not even have to spy on you because all the corporations will give this information over freely to the government. And according to this legislation, they will not be held accountable. The NSA's secret project, codenamed Boundless Informant, seeks to establish control over information space, collect the data on 97 billion phone calls worldwide since March 2013. The Global Economic Intelligence Net Echelon, that was established by the U.S. in cooperation with the UK back in 1947, allowed the intelligence agencies of the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Denmark, Germany, and Turkey, and other countries to exchange secret information, including the records on their respective citizens. Yet another secret project, codenamed PRISM, established by the NSA and Britain's Government Communication Headquarters, which is GCHQ, allowed intelligence agencies to establish close partnerships with major IT companies back in 2007, which was Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, and Apple. Such cooperation allows the secret services to read private emails and monitor the transfer of files throughout the global information space. Basically, they gave them backdoors into their systems and allowed them to poke around. Again, a violation of our Fourth Amendment, and this is with every single one of these programs. Washington was not satisfied with those programs. They needed more. They needed to get more information because they couldn't get it. They couldn't get all of it because of those people that have encryption, and the NSA just can't break that encryption. The only encryption that they can break is the encryption that they have the method to, and they can find out the key. If someone created an encryption code and they don't have the method, it's virtually impossible to break, and if they didn't give them a back door, they can't break into it. So they weren't satisfied, so they continually create more and more programs. One of them is the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity Agency. In recent years has started a number of research programs to manipulate social networks, to get into the social networks and to follow people and to understand what they are doing. The intelligence community is also sponsoring the development of the Aladdin program, designed for automated analysis and description of video content. So if you produce a video, they can take that information and store it into the database. The main goal of this program is to provide intelligence analysis with automated search capabilities to track videos that could be of interest for them, like they do now with YouTube. They scan all the videos, they try to take down different YouTube channels that they don't agree with, and they try to they do send trolls to all these channels. They write comments, and you can just tell who these people are because they start popping up in very old videos, new videos, and they just start saying all these ridiculous things that don't make sense. They're just out of the blue. Like, yes, the economy's recovering. All you people are stupid. And we see a lot of this happen, and it does occur all over YouTube and many other social network platforms. Washington and its agencies are literally spending billions of taxpayer dollars annually under the convenient guise on the war on terror. And we can see they are using our money to spy on us. I mean, does this make any sense? And by doing this, they're violating our Fourth Amendment. So basically, The war on terror is the war on the citizens. That's what they're telling us. And they're using our funds for this because they realize when this collapse comes, they are worried of those people who are going to be a threat to their authority. They're worried of who's talking to who's planning something, who's thinking like, maybe this government needs to be removed at this point. Maybe this government in a peaceful way needs to step down and we need to start the system over once again. And again, we saw this back in the Revolutionary War where the founding fathers used to meet in certain areas and they used to have spies trying to figure out what they're planning, what they're doing. The same thing is happening today. It's just in the electronic frontier, it's a little different where they're looking around and trying to find these people, put it into a database, and try to figure out who is doing what. Now, as we know, China and Nicaragua, they are planning a new canal, and they've already started to build it. The U.S. Embassy in Nicaragua said on Tuesday it's concerned by the lack of information surrounding this canal, which is being built by the Chinese and spending about $50 billion. And they're saying that, we should get documents. They should be transparent on what they're doing. Well, the U.S. government isn't transparent on anything. They don't give any of the information up. Actually, they lie to the American people. But of course, the embassy is worried by the lack of information and transparency that has existed and continues to exist over many of the important aspects of this project. And we can see already they're starting to build up protests. They're starting to push agent provocateurs in this region to protest what's going on because they do not want this built. And we can see right now, just days after the groundbreaking, at least 21 people were injured in clashes between police and protesters opposed to the construction of the canal. So you can see they're already starting right now. They don't want this built. They don't want anything. They don't want China in this region because, of course, this canal will support China, Russia, military ships, and they will be able to bring in a lot bigger ships. And we can see right now they do not want China in this area, and this is why they're starting this up, because it's actually very close to the Panama Canal. And we can see right now, wherever China and Russia are, we always see protests, we always see terrorism, we always see all of these things so the U.S. can get into that area and fight whatever is going on. Now, out in Ukraine, it seems there's an aide to President Poroshenko, and on January 6th saying that there was $450 million that was stolen from Ukraine's military. The amount happens to be precisely the same maximum amount of money that the U.S. government, in legislation that was supported by more than 98% of U.S. senators and representatives, and that was signed into law by U.S. President Obama on December 18th, will donate to Ukraine's military for this year, 2015. The amount stolen in 2014 constituted about 20 to 25% of Ukraine's military budget. The question is, where did this money go? And is this the same amount that they're bringing in because it was taken by the corrupt politicians and the bankers in this country? And of course, we know who the bankers are. It's the central bank. Now, Sarah Flanders is out there from the International Action Center, and she said that according to documents, NATO is now arming Kiev with cluster weapons to crush the resistance in Ukraine's eastern region. And we know this. We know Ukraine is building up armed forces. They're bringing in lethal weapons. They're getting ready for a major offensive. And we can see there are more and more reports coming in saying Poroshenko, Yatsenyuk, they don't want peace. All of these peace talks are for show. It's to give them time. And it seems that the Cyber Berkut hacktivists broke into German government sites. They are angry that Ukraine's Prime Minister Yatsenyuk plans to use billions from the EU to fund war in the east of the country rather than rebuild it. The hackers claim they obtained the confidential State Department documents by breaking into mobile devices belonging to one of the American delegation members who had traveled to Ukraine together with U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. And they're saying that, yes, They are planning for war. They're getting ready for war, and this is what it's all about, and this is definitely what they're doing. They are planning, getting ready, taking the time, and eventually we'll most likely see some type of false flag where they'll blame it on Russia, or they'll blame it on the southeastern people with Russia's help, and they'll say they have to go to war. And we can see this has been building over time. Now, Iran is out there, and they're saying, you know something? We cannot trust the U.S. in these nuclear talks. And like I've said in the past, this has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. This has to do with the United States government central bankers getting into Iran and getting into their central bank, putting their natural resources on the U.S. dollar. This is what they're trying to do, and they're using the nuclear weapons as a smokescreen to all of this. Iran's supreme leader has said the United States cannot be trusted to lift sanctions in the future, because they have continually changed the plan, they changed the requirements, and they continually place sanctions on Iran. The U.S. will only make more demands if Iran agrees to curb its nuclear activities. And we've seen this in the past. This is exactly what the United States has done, and recently they placed more sanctions on Iran in the middle of peace talks. That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, the Malayan foreign minister is saying that the crisis in Libya could destabilize Mali. And we have to remember, the French government went into Mali because Germany wanted their gold back. French had no gold. They went into Mali because it's the third largest producing country that produces gold. And they were telling us that there's Al-Qaeda in there, terrorists. And now Mali is out there saying that Libya is a threat and we should go into Libya and put back the puppet government. And we can see right now they are building the propaganda. They're building the forces to go into Libya. They're getting prepared, and we could see something happen between 3 and 5 months from now, because we can see they have been preparing. They bombed a tanker, and as we know, they will never ever let any oil leave Libya to be sold to other countries not using the dollar. We've seen it before, and they will do it again. Now, there is a new survey out there, and this has to do with Iraq with weapons of mass destruction. A new survey has found that 42% of respondents believe that the U.S. forces found active weapons of mass destruction in Iraq after the 2003 invasion, when in fact, we know for a fact there were no weapons of mass destruction. They wanted to get into Iraq because, guess what? They were going to sell the natural resources not using the U.S. dollar. And as soon as they went in there, they put all the natural resources on the dollar. And this is exactly what really happened. There were no weapons of mass destruction, but they needed to convince the people this is why we needed to go in there. And it seems that a lot of people still do believe this. This survey was conducted by Fairleigh Dickinson University, Public Mind, and we can see right now when the next event does occur, the majority of the people will go along with it. They will be convinced of it, and they will think that they need to go to war. Now, the UK is ruling out ground troops until after the elections. You know, hundreds of British soldiers will not be sent to fight in Iraq this month due to fears that the casualties could cause political damage ahead of the 2015 general elections. They're so worried about this, about sending troops, that it would hurt the elections, but they have no problem sending the troops after the elections. Think about that for a second. According to the reports in the Daily Mail, Downing Street is said to be worried that the British military casualties could influence the overall outcome in May. This is how worried they are about the people and how they perceive things. But right after they're elected, they'll send tons and tons of troops in there, no problem, to support the central bank and to support what is going on. Now, the U.S. is sending additional equipment to Iraq. The United States has donated about 250 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles to the Iraqi government. The Department of State also said the United States continues to deliver weapons and ammunition to Iraq in response to the country's request to support counterterrorism policies that incorporates political, economic, and security cooperation. And in 2014, the United States allocated about $300 million to Iraq for additional military equipment for Iraqi soldiers, including 12,000 sets of body armor, Kevlar helmets, medical kits, and counter-IED equipment, and 10,000 rifles. They're also selling Iraq another 170 M1 Abrams tanks. And we have to remember, the Islamic State took about 40 of these tanks. So indirectly, there will be supplying the Islamic State with more tanks because, as we know, they're bringing in a lot of military assets into the depots in Kuwait. They're building up the armed forces in Iraq, and they're bringing in military assets so the Islamic State can roll into Syria and go after Assad. And we can see this is definitely building up and starting to really push further and further. Now, like I said yesterday, and I found this in the Times, it does say that the U.S. troops are now under frequent attacks, and they're saying that Obama has political pressure right now to escalate what is going on in Iraq. Because the troops now are no longer advisors, they're being fired upon, they're combat-ready soldiers, maybe the government should authorize more troops into Iraq. And we can see that this is definitely what is happening. This is called mission creep, and eventually we know that there will be a lot more troops heading in there. We know they have it all set up with the division headquarters that support up to 30,000 soldiers. They have an air base. They have weapons waiting outside in Kuwait. They are ready to go. They are ready to push this forward, and we can see they are building more of this as time goes on. The Pentagon will be sending more troops into Iraq. Of course, these will be advisors, trainers to the Iraqi military, and they're setting these advisors up in all different cities, Anbar, Mosul, and they're setting it up all around Iraq. And it seems like they're getting pre-positioned with all the soldiers in this country. And again, you have to remember they're trying to work out this agreement to get the soldiers immunity, and we can see that eventually they will get it signed, and we'll see the soldiers pour into Iraq with absolutely no problem. Now, with North Korea, we see that James Clapper, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, they have named the person who ordered the cyber attacks from North Korea, and his name is Lieutenant General Kim Young-chol. And of course they know exactly that it's him. He had to give the order. He's the only one, and they're just building the propaganda. We already know it wasn't North Korea. The FBI's out there saying, yes, we are definite now that it is North Korea. Yeah, we do believe it. Yes, we are definite. They're backtracking on this. They're trying to convince everyone that, yes, this is who ordered the cyber attacks. But we know from many different cybersecurity firms who looked into this, that really did their research, who isn't using propaganda, they have said it is a disgruntled employee. We went over this before, and they are the ones who actually did this, and this is exactly who it is. But again, the Obama administration has a different agenda. Now, it seems like a new warning is coming up, and it's called agro-terrorism. They're very worried about the U.S. food supply. It could be devastated by a terrorist attack. Agriculture accounts for roughly about 13% of the country's gross annual domestic product. An introduction of deadly pathogens into the U.S. livestock, poultry, or crops would not only result in a disease outbreak, but would disrupt the global food industry and drive up food prices. Ever since 9/11, farmers across the United States have been on high alert because the U.S. food supply remains vulnerable to terrorists seeking to harm Americans and damage the economy through non-violent means. So you can see right now, they have been planning the destruction of the economy, and they're thinking of all different ways where they can blame somebody else. The terrorists hit the food supply. The oil prices are being suppressed. They hit the power grid. They hit the financial institutions. So they're doing everything they possibly can. But I always thought that Monsanto was already the terrorist that's been hurting our food supply. We already know who it is. We just need to go after them. Now, we understand there was a terrorist attack in Paris. They hit Charlie Hebdo, and this is a magazine And basically, the attackers displayed a degree of skill and calmness that comes only from advanced military training. And already you can see that this has been set up. They're dressed in black. They're dressed in black masks. As one gunman ran out of the office, Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris, he raised his right index finger in a gesture that has been adopted by radical Islamists. It's a military gesture, and we can see these people have been trained. And again, these people could be anybody. Of course, they're wearing masks, and it seems like they've already identified all of these people, and they know exactly who they are. Soldiers pictured patrolling Paris in combat fatigues with machine guns. They're already locking down Paris. They're taking away the people's rights. And you can see this is the same thing that happened in the Boston bombing. They're doing the same thing in France. Troops are deployed to train stations, places of worship, and public spaces. And this is the way they can get the armed forces into each one of these areas. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that a 33-year-old witness to the attacks has said that the two terrorists shouted, "Tell the media that this is Al-Qaeda in Yemen." Does that make any sense whatsoever? So let me get this straight. The people of Yemen are taking back their country. The government there is having a huge amount of problems. The United States can't figure out a way to get back into Yemen to support the puppet government there. They've been trying to use drone attacks, but they have been failing. And now we have the people of Yemen in France screaming out, "Tell the media that this is Al-Qaeda in Yemen." Something doesn't sound right here. This goes on to say that two terrorists shouted that they were from Al-Qaeda in Yemen before they launched the brutal attack on the magazine. The Yemeni offshoot of Al-Qaeda has exploited recent instability to seize parts of the country's south and east. And the United States is saying that this is the dangerous Al-Qaeda. This is one of the worst. It's the deadliest branch. And this is why we need to, understand what's going on here. And these people seem to have a rocket launcher. And all of this really doesn't make sense whatsoever. It doesn't make sense what was going on there. Why was this person yelling? They also yelled Allahu Akbar, and of course tell the media that this is Al-Qaeda in Yemen. So why would they do this? This makes no sense whatsoever. Terrorists then escaped the police. While the police were shooting everywhere, they just couldn't find them. They're running around. They're still searching for them as I'm doing this report. The terrorists struck at a time when the top people for the publication would be in their big meeting. So the question is, how did they know this? Was there someone in the inside? How did they know that the top people would be in a meeting? Because this is not broadcasted everywhere. They don't let everyone know. So something seems like it was completely set up. And of course, we have Obama out there yelling that we support this. We are in touch with the French. We back them. And if they need our help, we will send the FBI. They'll help. Actually, they'll kind of cover it all up so no one can find out what was going on. But the question is, why did this happen? Well, we have to remember, during the run-up to Christmas, the Chancellor of Austria, Werner Faymann, cautioned against pushing the Russian economy towards collapse. "I cannot approve of the euphoria of many in the EU over the success of sanctions against Russia. I see absolutely no cause for celebration. Europe's fragile coalition against Russia is looking shakier by the day. The coalition against the Islamic State was starting to break apart, and a lot of the countries saying, something, we don't really need to be there." According to German officials, Italy, Hungary, and Slovakia will be the most difficult to keep on board with the coalition. And among the heavyweights to jump into the fray was French President, who in public, as we know, said that we need to get rid of these sanctions. They must stop now. And it's just so interesting, as he said this, couple days or weeks later, what do we have? We have a false flag event to keep everyone in line. Even Spain is out there, and they're airing their grievances to the sanctions on Russia and what's going on with the Islamic State. All the European countries are saying, something, this is really hurting our economy. We don't want to go to war. And we can see this was all built up to keep the coalition in line, to keep terror live. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.